The evening sun sank behind the hills of Okoromi, spilling molten gold over the red earth. The air, thick and alive, shimmered with the smell of roasted yam, sweetwood smoke, and the sharp tang of palm wine. From the distance, a sound drifted through the twilight, the steady, ancient rhythm of drums, like the very heartbeat of the village, throbbed through the soil. This was Okoromi, a land where tradition was as essential as breath, and faith flowed like blood in the veins of its people. To be born here was to belong to something older than memory itself, a sacred covenant between humanity and the gods. At the very heart of the town, commanding respect and awe, stood the compound of Chief Ogun. It was a place both grand and sacred, its gates guarded by carved totems of fierce warriors and symbols of iron. The chief himself was a man both feared and revered, for he was more than a leader. He was the high priest of Ogun, the formidable god of iron and war. His ancestors had served Ogun for countless generations, and his son, the strong and dutiful Adewale, was chosen from birth to continue this sacred lineage. His path was set in stone, or so it seemed, but even destiny, as unyielding as it appears, can sometimes tremble before the power of love. It was at the riverbank, under a sky painted with the last strokes of sunset, that fate decided to play its mischievous hand. The moon, low and perfectly round, poured a river of silver light over the water, turning the familiar landscape into something magical. Adewale had come to the river to wash away the day's grime. He had been helping the blacksmiths, and the metallic scent of iron still clung to his skin, a constant reminder of his duty. That was when he heard it. A sound so different from the drums of his village, a soft, melodic voice that seemed to drift on the breeze, weaving itself through the gentle rush of the river. It was a hymn, clear and pure. Jesus loves me, this I know. Drawn by the enchanting sound, he moved quietly through the reeds, his bare feet silent on the damp earth, and then he saw her. Amara, the daughter of Pastor Okoro, the new preacher who had recently arrived from the city of Enugu. She was rinsing clothes by the water's edge, her simple white scarf glowing like a halo in the moonlight. Her face, though calm, was alive with a quiet, unshakable strength that pulled him in like a moth to a flame. He was mesmerized. Breaking the sacred silence of the night, Adewale stepped closer. "Good evening," Adewale said, his deep voice a stark contrast to her gentle song. Amara turned, startled. Her eyes, wide and curious, met Adewale's. In them he saw no fear, only a flicker of surprise. "Good evening," she answered softly, her voice as musical as her singing. A slow smile spread across Adewale's face. Adewale said, "Must be the pastor's daughter everyone is talking about." Amara studied Adewale for a moment, her gaze direct and intelligent. "And you," Amara replied, a hint of challenge in her tone, "must be the chief's son, the one chosen for the shrine." Adewale let out a low chuckle, a sound that rumbled in his chest. "Then you already know I'm the one your people warn you about." She tilted her head, a playful smile touching her lips. "And yet, you still came to speak to me." He grinned, feeling a connection he couldn't explain. "Maybe the gods pushed me here." Amara laughed, a light, genuine sound that danced over the water. "Or maybe," she countered, "God did." In that moment, their words danced between two worlds, between faith and fate, tradition and change. Though they parted ways that night as the moon climbed higher in the sky, something profound had already taken root. Something sacred and, perhaps, something very dangerous had just begun to bloom in the heart of Okoromi. What happens when the son of a god and the daughter of God find their paths entwined? The village and their lives would never be the same. For weeks, the river became Adewale and Amara's sanctuary, a secret temple hidden in plain sight. Adewale would come, claiming he was fetching water for his family, while Amara would arrive with her mother's laundry, a perfect alibi. There, by the whispering water, they wove a world of their own. They talked about everything and nothing life in the village, the beliefs that shaped them, their deepest fears, and their most fragile dreams. Adewale, his voice low and rich, painted pictures of the old gods. He spoke of Ogun, the mighty deity who forged the world with fire and iron will, and of the ancestors who watched over the living, their spirits woven into the very fabric of the land. Amara, in turn, shared stories of grace. Amara spoke of a love that didn't demand sacrifice, but was itself the ultimate sacrifice, of a forgiveness so profound it could wash away all fear. One evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the sky, Amara gently challenged Adewale. "Your gods need blood to be pleased," she said, her voice soft but certain. Adewale met her gaze, a thoughtful smile playing on his lips. "And your god gave blood to save men," he replied. A quiet understanding passed between Amara and Adewale. "Then, maybe," she whispered, "both seek peace." Their differences didn't create a chasm. They built a bridge. Every conversation was a discovery, a new layer to peel back. And with each passing day, Adewale felt his heart staging a quiet rebellion against his upbringing. But in a village like Okoromi, secrets are like smoke. They can only be contained for so long. The whispers began in the marketplace, carried on the humid air. The women selling yams and peppers noticed how often the pastor's daughter lingered by the river. A hunter returning at dusk claimed he saw the chief's son walking her home, their silhouettes close in the fading light. Within 3 weeks, idle gossip had sharpened into daggers. The whispers finally reached the chief's compound. When Chief Ogundel heard the news, his rage was a physical force, shaking the very foundations of his house. Adewale, he thundered, the sound like cracking timber. Chief Ogundel slammed his ceremonial staff on the packed earth floor, the impact echoing his fury. "You bring shame upon this bloodline." Adewale stood before him, head bowed. "Father, silence," the chief roared. "You, the one destined to become Ogun's high priest, are you courting the daughter of a man who calls our sacred gods demons?" "She is not like that," Adewale said, his voice quiet but firm, a small rock against a raging sea. "Amara respects what she doesn't understand. Respect." The chief spat the word like poison. "She poisons your mind with her foreign faith. You will end this foolishness now before the gods themselves strike you dead for this betrayal." But Adewale's defiant silence was an answer in itself. He couldn't. He wouldn't. That very same evening, a parallel storm broke out in the pastor's home. Pastor Okoro's voice, usually raised in prayer and song, now echoed with a righteous fury that made the windows rattle. "Amara, how dare you shame this family? Your name, our name, in the mud with asterisk that asterisk boy." His entire lineage bows to idols of wood and stone. Tears streamed down Amara's face, her body trembling. "Papa, Adewale is kind. He listens to me. He makes me feel. Pastor Okoro interrupted, his voice sharp. "Love is not blind to darkness, my child. The scripture is clear. What fellowship has light with idols?" Amara fell to her knees, her hands clasped in a desperate plea. "But father, what if he finds the light asterisk through asterisk love? What if my love can lead him to your God?" Pastor Okoro's face was a mask of cold disappointment. He pointed a trembling finger toward the door. "If you see that boy again, you are no longer my daughter." The words hung in the air, a final, unbreakable decree. The festival of Ogun arrived like a storm of fire and frenzy. The rhythmic pounding of drums vibrated through the earth, a primal heartbeat for the entire village. Bare-chested men, their bodies decorated with white chalk and red powder, danced with wild abandon, their movements a tribute to the god of iron in African style. Flames leapt high into the night sky, illuminating the village square as goats, the designated sacrifices, were led toward the shrine. Adewale watched from the edge of the Ogun celebration, a spectator in his own life. His heart felt like a lead weight in his chest. The ancient chants that once stirred his soul, filling him with pride and purpose, now sounded hollow and distant. His mind wasn't here, amidst the fire and drums. It was at the river with Amara. Unable to bear it any longer, he slipped away from the frenetic crowd, melting into the shadows. Adewale followed the familiar moonlit path, his feet knowing the way by heart, and there she was, waiting for him beneath the sprawling branches of the old fig tree. When she saw him emerge from the darkness, her breath caught in her throat. "Adewale, you shouldn't be here. It's the festival," said Amara. "I couldn't stay away," he answered, his voice thick with emotion. Tears, like liquid starlight, shimmered in her eyes. "They'll destroy us if they find out. They'll tear us apart." He closed the distance between them, Adewale's own voice trembling now. "Then let them destroy the world, Amara. As long as you are the one thing left standing, I don't care." The night pulsed around them, a symphony of distant drums and the soft whisper of the wind through the leaves. Fireflies swirled in a magical, silent dance, their tiny lights illuminating the space between them. "Maybe in another life," Amara whispered, her voice barely audible, "you would be born under the cross." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. "And maybe in that life," he said, his voice a low caress, "you would be born beneath the shrine." And then Adewale's lips met hers. It was a kiss that was tender and desperate, a forbidden act that felt more sacred than any ritual. The very air seemed to hold its breath, honoring the moment. When they finally parted, Amara rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the frantic beating of his heart. "If love is a sin," she murmured, "then may heaven forgive us both." He kissed the top of her head, inhaling her scent. "If love is holy," he replied, "then the gods have already blessed us." They stayed like that until the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky, their hands entwined, their two worlds merged into one. Adewale and Amara were oblivious, lost in their small pocket of peace, not knowing that the morning would bring utter ruin. At sunrise, the village guards, on their final patrol, found them asleep, huddled together for warmth near the river bank. The news spread through Okoromi faster than a bushfire in the dry season. The chief's heir, the future high priest, defiled by a Christian girl. The pastor's daughter, tainted and corrupted by a pagan. The village elders gathered in an emergency council. The church elders called it blasphemy of the highest order. The shrine keepers called it an abomination that would anger the gods. There was no trial, only judgment. Adewale was dragged back to his father's compound, his protests silenced by the guards. He was locked inside the very shrine he was meant to one day lead. Amara was seized by her own father, his face a mask of stone. Her Bible was torn from her hands, and she was locked in her room, her voice silenced, her spirit crushed. For 7 days, an unnatural thunder rumbled over Okoromi, though not a single drop of rain fell. The air grew thick and heavy, smelling of unspoken fury and impending sorrow. The Okoromi village held its breath, waiting for the gods or God to pass their final sentence. On the 7th night, a great ceremony would be held to cleanse the land and reaffirm their devotion to Ogun. The tension in the village of Okoromi was thick enough to cut with a knife. Adewale was torn. He respected his chief and his heritage, but his love for Amara pulled him in another direction. She urged him to see that love and faith were not battlefields, but gardens that could grow together. The 7th night arrived, heavy with anticipation. The priests chanted, the drums beat, and the air crackled with ancient power. Chief Ogundal raised his hands to the sky, calling upon Ogun to show his strength. And the sky answered, but not in the way anyone expected. A storm erupted from a clear sky. It wasn't just rain, it was a fury, a celestial war. Wind howled through the village, and lightning, like a spear from heaven, struck the heart of Okoromi. The shrine of Ogun, fire exploded from the roof, consuming decades of tradition in moments. The sacred idol, the very symbol of their faith, cracked and split in two. Chief Ogundal collapsed, his authority shattered along with the idol. The priests cried out in despair. From the other side of the village, Pastor Okoro saw the inferno and declared it a sign from his god. But amidst the chaos, one person was utterly still. Adewale, soaked by the torrential rain, knelt before the burning ruins of his world. In that moment of utter devastation, only one name escaped his lips, a desperate whisper against the storm. Amara. The morning after the storm was eerily silent. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a village shrouded in mist and disbelief. The once proud shrine was a pile of charred rubble and sorrow. Chief Ogundal was a broken man, humbled by a power he couldn't comprehend. In the quiet aftermath, Adewale vanished. Some villagers whispered that he had fled into the deep forest, overcome by shame. Others swore they saw him walking the long, dusty road toward the distant city of Enugu. The strange and violent storm had left its mark on everyone. Pastor Okoro, perhaps shaken by the raw power he had witnessed, accepted a transfer to another town far from Okoromi. Amara went with him, her heart aching for the loss of Adewale and the pain of her village, but her own faith remained her anchor. Years melted into the past. Life in Okoromi went on. The villagers, resilient as ever, slowly rebuilt their shrine, but things were different. A whisper lingered in the air, a question that was never spoken aloud. Had their powerful god, Ogun, bowed to something or someone greater that night? The story of the storm became a legend, a cautionary tale, a mystery. Many years later, a traveler from Okoromi found himself in the bustling city of Enugu. Weary from his journey, he stumbled upon a small, humble church tucked away on a quiet roadside. The building itself was simple, its walls showing their age, but a sound of pure joy spilled from its open doors, the sound of children's laughter. Curiosity drew the black man closer. At the front of the church, a man was speaking. He preached with a fire and passion that held the small congregation captive. The traveler looked closer, and his breath caught in his throat. The man had the distinct tribal marks of his own village, and across his hand was a familiar scar, a mark of a carver's life. It was Adewale. And standing right beside him, a calm and radiant smile on her face, was a woman with eyes that still held the magic of moonlight on water. It was Amara. Together, they ran an orphanage. In this small, unassuming place, they had built a sanctuary, a home for children from all walks of life, from every faith. They didn't erase the children's pasts, they celebrated them. Behind the church, nestled under the shade of a large fig tree, the traveler saw something that made him stop. It was a small, simple display. On one side stood a carving of iron, weathered by time, but unmistakably a symbol of Ogun. Beside it stood a simple wooden cross. The two objects, once symbols of a great conflict, now stood side by side, united in quiet harmony. When the traveler later asked Adewale about the display, the man who had once been Okoromi's finest carver simply smiled. "The gods met the cross here," he said, his voice filled with a deep, peaceful wisdom and love one. This story reminds us of a profound truth. True love doesn't ask us to abandon who we are or where we come from. It doesn't demand we erase our history. Instead, it illuminates our potential, showing us who we can become. It teaches us that when faith is guided by compassion, and when tradition is met with understanding, our hearts can stop being fortresses and start becoming bridges. Sometimes, in a world that insists on drawing lines and choosing sides, the most sacred, the most courageous thing two people can do is simply to love. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories that explore the beautiful complexities of the human spirit. Until next time, be well.